and thank you all for being here today. It is actually a real pleasure to be amongst you all today. So we have today, as the CNI mentioned, we have Government of Sri Lankan colleagues, we have law enforcement officials, academics, UN agencies and diplomatic missions. So I wanted to first of all say good morning and thank you for being here. You're all valued partners in this discussion. Also just want to acknowledge the remarks of CNI before me, Major General Ruan Wanigasurya, who is also the head, as you mentioned, of the Committee of the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. So why are we all here today, and why is it for me particularly a pleasure to be here today? It's to open the thematic dialogue in Colombo, where we have gathered to discuss what is one of the most pressing challenges facing our region. It is the trafficking of persons into cyber scam centres. So I'd first of all like to recognise the work of the Sri Lankan Government and the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force in particular for its commitment to addressing cyber scam centres, as well as their partnership in putting on today's event. Though I am based here in Colombo at the Australian High Commission as the Deputy Head of Mission, I'm also representing, as Ryan mentioned, the RSO, so the Regional Support Office of the Bali process, which Australia's Department of Home Affairs co-manages alongside our Indonesian counterparts. So for those of you who may be a little bit less familiar, the Bali process on people smuggling, trafficking in persons and related transnational crime, or in short form, the Bali process, is a forum for policy dialogue, information sharing and practical cooperation. And it was established in 2002. It has 49 members, which 45 member states and 4 member organisations, ILO, IOM, UNHRC and UNIDOC. And the RSO, which I believe many of you would be familiar with, the Regional Support Office, helped co-organise the event today, was established in 2012 with the express purpose of supporting and strengthening practical cooperation amongst Bali process members. So the RSO is assisting in coordination as well as implementation of the Bali process and facilitating information sharing, capacity building and the exchange of best practices, such as through today's dialogue. So we are gathered today as we face what is a somewhat newly emerging threat, a cross-boundary challenge in the form of cyber scam centres. Since the onset of COVID-19, these scam centres have evolved rapidly. They've become complex, transnational criminal enterprises that exploit vulnerable individuals and undermine the security and the economic stability of the region. The scale of the challenge is staggering, with tens of thousands of victims of trafficking trapped within scam centres across the region, and the illicit proceeds flowing from the scams estimated to be in the billions of dollars. And in the case of Sri Lanka, as many of you know, so many have been trapped in these centres, some with little ability to communicate for the outside world for many months at a time. And we have had some success in recent months with a few releases. In fact, as CNI mentioned, that really has been something where there's now actually an additional process there, which is reintegration of those that have been trafficked. So this is an emerging threat that is throwing up a lot of new challenges for all of us. And these scam centres, they do present themselves often as legitimate business operations. They've become a new frontier for organised crime and for those working to address trafficking in persons. These recruiters are targeting potential victims with promises of high-paying jobs, only to trap them in situations of exploitation, forcing them to perpetrate scams. They're often facing violence, food deprivation and other forms of torture. So at the Bali Process 2023 ministerial meeting, which was held in Adelaide in Australia, ministers and senior officials identified this as a priority issue requiring a regional response. And since that time, the RSO, supported by Australia's Department of Home Affairs, has assisted in coordinating member states, international organisations and civil society to develop a regional response. Some examples of the work that they've done. In 2023, in January, a dialogue such as this one was held in Bangkok, and that brought together more than 150 law enforcement officials, policymakers, NGOs and international organisations. Following this, they compiled and issued the first comprehensive review of this issue, which was just titled Trapped in Deceit, and I'm sure they'll be able to point you in the direction if you'd like to read that. And the RSO then held its second thematic dialogue in October last year with the Philippines Interagency Council Against Trafficking. Other work that's been done has been to support Interpol's Operation Stormmakers 2 in 2023 and Operation Libertera 2 that was held last year. This was a coordinated international law enforcement response to cyber scam centres, and in 2024 it led to the rescue of 3,222 potential victims of trafficking, so a real achievement there. And as Ryan mentioned, this week the RSO is in Colombo to facilitate an online investigations workshop, which is looking at capacity building to identify and investigate online recruitment tactics, to coordinate online investigations, and to monitor trends. So, at today's thematic dialogue, we are aiming to build on all of these discussions and to develop more coordinated and effective responses to this threat. And I think it's really important that you draw on the perspectives and expertise from all of those in the room today. I'd like to recognise again the strong partnership that we have had here in Sri Lanka. As cyber scam centres become an increasing challenge affecting both Sri Lankans and others in the wider region, the active response and engagement with our colleagues here in Sri Lanka and in this room today really ought to be commended. We very much appreciate and value this engagement. So this morning's discussions, from our perspective, there are perhaps 3 areas that you should look at in particular to consider. First of all, how can we work more effectively across borders and across sectors? It's often the case, and when I talk to my colleagues both in Australia and in Sri Lanka across the government, is that we work in silos. And international cooperation can do the same. So to date, a lot of the response to this issue has been actually siloed to some extent. But this is an unprecedented challenge. It's a different challenge, and it requires a different response. It requires a scaling up of international cooperation. It requires improved policy alignment, better information sharing between law enforcement agencies, and also looking at how we engage social media companies and banking institutions across the region to take a more proactive role in responding to this challenge. Second of all, we believe that there's a need to look at prosecutions. How do we prioritise prosecutions? Because seeing traffickers more regularly prosecuted will act as a deterrent. And as a part of this, looking at senior transnational crime figures, those who are profiting the most. These people do need to be targeted so the systems that they control are addressed from the very top down. And thirdly, across the region, more support is needed for victims, because in many places there continue to be gaps in terms of shelters, access to psychosocial support, and access to repatriation and services following repatriation. So resourcing is an issue there too, focusing on victims' needs and looking to ensure that those who have been freed from the scam centres can return home in a dignified manner. So we believe that by working together, sharing information and coordinating our responses, we have a better chance to effectively combat scam centres and the criminal networks behind them. So I'll finalise this here today to say that essentially we're looking at using these as platforms for you to have discussions, for you to exchange information, to better understand what is a complex issue, so understand what the situation is like now, and then secondly, to look at new ways to address it. So putting new ideas on the table and talking to each other about how we can address the situation. So to conclude, I'd like to once again thank our co-host, the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, for joining with us in putting today's dialogue and bringing it to Sri Lanka. You've been a very strong partner of the RSO. I also just want to recognise the event organisers and particularly the participants for taking the time to be here today. We look forward to working with you all and collaborating better as we address this very important issue and working to address trafficking more broadly as well. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.